Hello and welcome to another recorded training session for RPMS EHR. My name is Katie Johnson and I am the EHR Integrated Care Coordinator at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. Today we will cover the Notifications tab. Time for my disclaimer. In all of these recordings, the database that I am using is a scrambled training database. It contains no real patient information. The data may look real, but it is not. Okay, so here we are on our Notifications tab within EHR. Notifications are very much what they sound like. In EHR, they are notifying you, the user, of something that needs to be done or something that you might have forgotten. And they can also act as, it could just be something that needs to have an action taken on it, like information added to the visit. It could simply be just an information-only notification, letting you know about something. The notification can come from the computer, like a computer-generated notification, something automatic, where, for instance, it knows that this order is missing a signature and it knows it's not complete without it, or a visit that is missing a purpose of visit, things like that, generated automatically by the computer. Or there are also notifications that a user can send to another user of the system. You could send it to one of the other providers at your clinic or nurse or whomever. Or you can even send notifications to yourself. Overall, you want to keep this list as short and manageable as you can. You do not want to let this get away from you. This list of notifications potentially sometimes can get very long and unruly, and once you get behind, like anything else, it can be hard to get caught up. And the longer the list gets, the less useful it is for you, really. So ideally, you should be addressing your notifications every day and getting rid of as many of them as possible, so that when new and important things pop up, you can easily identify it and know what is going on with your Notifications tab. So please don't ignore your Notifications tab. That it really is something that needs to be addressed every day. One other word of caution is sometimes I've seen providers get into the habit of using this notifications as kind of a to-do list or a follow-up list of things or patients that they want to keep track of. And if this is the only place you're keeping that information, it's not a very wise practice, because things do happen with notifications sometimes, and sometimes they can just through computer glitches and this and that. There are purging intervals where you might not know what your system is set, what the interval is, and it could be very long, maybe even 2 months or 3 months or something, but then all of a sudden you come in the next day and all of your notifications have been purged that had not been addressed, and you might lose that information. And particularly information-only notifications are very difficult to track down, and oftentimes if something happens to those notifications, they really are lost. So I don't want you to lose. That's the only place you had your list of kind of virtual sticky notes kind of thing, of something you were trying to keep track of. I don't want this to be the only place you've got that information, and heavily rely on that, because like I said, things do happen. So I mentioned there are different kinds of notifications, and now I want to talk about the different icons here that we see on the Notifications tab. We have our little color coding system here that denotes the priority of a notification, and the priority of the notification is determined by the program, but there are red ones that it has determined are higher priority. Those are typically things that require an action, like you need to sign an order or sign off on a lab that you have seen the result. You're signing, yes, I acknowledge I've seen that result, things like that. Yellow ones are somewhere kind of in between, and then green ones are typically more just information that you need to do. Not, it may be an action that you need to take, but it's not, it's generally not things that are as pressing as things like a missing signature for an order, because if you've made an order and you didn't sign it, then it's likely sitting there and can't be acted upon, something like that. So that's what our red, yellow, and green is here. In this next column, we see either blanks or we see that little bubble, little conversation bubble with an I in it. And that denotes, if you see one of those bubbles, that means those are information only type of notifications. And they are what they sound like. They're ones that either you have sent to yourself or another user has sent to you, not computer generated, not needing you to necessarily do something that the computer has decided you need to sign this, or it's missing a piece of information on the visit or something like that. As far as overall functioning of the notifications tab, I want to point out a couple of features. One is that you can sort any of these columns, and you do that simply by clicking on it. One time it sorts it, click it on again, it sorts it in the reverse order. So I'm clicking here on the priority column, and it puts the reds at the top. I click it again, it puts the reds at the bottom. Same thing for any of these columns. Patient in alphabetical order, delivery date. Those are probably your more common ones, or even the type of notification. If you wanted to get all of your missing purposes of visits all together, that's an easy way to do that. A note on these columns, the location is often not filled in, and don't worry about that. The sent/forwarded by column, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. As you can see, a lot of these say that they are from me, but it's just because I'm the user who, I was logged in and I was working on the visit that it now says is missing a purpose of visit, so I was the primary provider on that visit. And so those can be a little bit misleading. It's really a computer generated one, but it says that it came from me. Sometimes there are things that truly are, they look like a name, but that's a computer function here. Taskman is a task manager that runs in the background of the computer. So that's kind of, just be aware of that this sent forwarded thing, you might need to take with a grain of salt if you're trying to track down what was going on. It should be accurate for these information only notifications, that they really are from this user that's listed here. Another thing, as you're seeing as I've been moving my cursor around, is this hover help. And it's just as I hover my cursor over a certain notification, it's giving me a little bit more detail about that notification without me having to double click on it. That's all that is. One other distinction about notifications is that they can be associated with the patient, and that's the most common type of notification that you see, and it'll have the patient's name here. But if you notice, it is blank here in the patient section, and that is a function that is allowed when you're sending a notification to another user in the system. You can choose to associate it with a patient or not. So if it was just something you wanted to, if it was a non-patient associated message that you wanted to send, you can simply send it, and then it will come across to the other user with the blank not associated with the patient. So, because we've said it is important to keep up on your notifications, we want to talk a little bit about how to process your notifications. Basically, your goal is to address whatever it is that the notification wants you to do. Oftentimes it's signing things, maybe that you accidentally forgot, and really probably one of the most common things is signing off on lab results. So if you were the ordering provider on a lab, when the result comes back into the system, you get a notification, and then you just need to go and you enter your signature code, your electronic signature code, and that is acknowledging that you have seen that lab result. Now, if it's a critical lab result and you need to follow up on it, that's a whole other process. That's a different story. But there's simply a notification saying that you saw this lab result, whether it was abnormal or not. You get the notification to sign off on it. There are several different ways to address the notifications. You can simply go to the notification and double click on it, and it will take you straight to the orders that it's talking about. So in this case, I double clicked on it, it pulled up this patient, it went straight to the orders, it highlighted them for me, and it wants me to sign them. So I'm going to go ahead and click sign, and it was actually, if you notice there as well, it highlighted 3 orders. It's actually just the one order it was wanting me to sign, the warfarin here. So I go ahead and I can do that. If there were any other things that would normally come up during the ordering process, they will come up here as well. So you notice now my warfarin order that I had ordered is gone, but we notice there are 2 others assigned to a different provider that are unreleased orders that are unsigned. So you can, and this is a local policy thing, if you run across this, there may be situations where you then still go ahead and sign these orders, or you leave those for whatever provider is responsible for those to take care of those. And really that is not that common that you're going to come across multiple unsigned orders by multiple providers on one patient. I think that is just because this is, again, a demo database that we have been testing with and experimenting with and things like that. So if that was just, I just took one notification, double clicked on it, and you see what happened there. Okay, so if we return to our notifications tab, I want to show you a couple other ways to address notifications. And that is down here in the, if we pay attention to this process section in the lower right hand corner, we can click the all button and it will highlight all of them. And then it also gives us a little play bar here to go to the next one or to stop, because it is just simply going to step us through each one of these notifications. And I want to leave some there so that we can do some other demonstration, but I just wanted to show you. So say I'm not ready to sign that for whatever reason, I can just click cancel. I could, if I got interrupted in the middle of processing all of my notifications, I can click stop and it will let me out of it. That is if I just wanted to sit down and process all of my notifications at one time. If I wanted to just deal with some notifications, I can use the shift or the control key in my mouse to select just some notifications. The shift key is an inclusive key when you're doing things like that. The control key lets you pick and choose. So right there I was holding down the control key and then I clicked on the first and the third notification there. And then I can go to process selected. And again, I have this little play bar because I have more than one thing, and I can go to next if I want to. You see it switched patients there, and that was the end of my list. But it's taking me directly to the spot where it wants me to take this action. So in this case, it said I was missing a purpose of visit. When I clicked on that notification, it filled in the patient, it filled in the visit that it was talking about, and it took me to the spot to enter my visit diagnosis. So in that way, it tries to make it as easy as possible for you to accomplish whatever it is you're being notified of. So you can process all, you can process some, you can skip things. It's really kind of a personal preference on how you want to manage your notifications. The info only ones, if you notice, are almost kind of like a secure email, and some providers do use it that way. Now, one thing to be cautious of is if you choose to use this, You can see it is an information only. You read something that maybe another provider wanted you to know about this patient, and that's really all it is, and you can and then you typically would delete it. But I want to point out the other the other options here under the process button. One of them is forward, and so you can forward a notification, pretty much any notification, to another provider. But if we're talking specifically about information only notifications, don't confuse that with replying, because it does kind of feel like an email. But if I did this and I say forward, and then I choose who I want to forward this to, I can do that. I can make a comment, for whatever reason you wanted to say. Maybe you thought it was a mistake, or you want to reply to whatever it is that they sent to you. They're only going to see your comment. It's not an email where you can look back at the entire email string and see, oh, here was what was written, here's what I replied, and remind you of the context of what's going on. That's not the case. You only get what you see here. Each person only gets the comment. They don't get the history of comments. So we talked about processing all, processing only selected, processing just your information only notifications, and then forwarding. And again, you can forward not only the information only notifications, you can forward other types of notifications as well. If you feel that it was sent to you in mistake, or somebody's covering for you, or whatever might be the case, you can do that. The other thing you can do for some notifications, you notice here I have a missing purpose of visit selected, and the delete button is grayed out. In other types of notifications, I do have the delete button. So some things you are able to delete yourself. Some things you need to actually do the action that it's asking you to do in order to get the notification to go away. And then in a few instances, sometimes a notification might get, quote, stuck, and you've done the action that it asked you to do, but it did not delete itself off of your notifications tab, and you are not able to manually delete it. And those are the cases where you need to talk to your clinical application coordinator, and they can help you figure out what's going on, or they can delete it on their side, more on the technical side, and hopefully wipe that out for you. One last thing on the notifications tab is how to generate one of these information only notifications to send either to yourself or to another provider. It can sometimes be hard to remember because there isn't a button necessarily that shows you what to do on this. It can be a little bit frustrating and hard to remember because there isn't necessarily a button that shows us right away, hey, I want to compose a new information only notification. But if you go in the white space of your notifications tab and right click, you go to schedule. And this is where it's called, so instead of sending a notification, it's called scheduling a notification. So you would click on add. You can tell it when you want it to deliver. Typically that's now, but if for some reason, or maybe you wanted to remind yourself of something, you could say, oh, deliver this to me in a week and remind me to check up on, did this patient see another provider, or whatever the case may be. I'm just going to click now for this purpose. I'm going to say okay. You can obviously fill in a subject. The recipients, here's the other thing that can catch you. It defaults to yourself, so if you do mean to send it to another provider, it's easily forgotten. Then you skip right over this field because it's already filled in for you, and then you think, a few days later, I swear I sent this notification to my other provider and they never got it, and then you realize, wait, I just sent it to myself. So to change who you're sending it to, you click on the three little dots. You have your whole list of users here. You choose one. You can use the arrow here to move it over. You can use the right arrow to move it over or the left arrow to move it back if you make a mistake. You can have multiple recipients. You can take yourself off or leave yourself on, whatever the case may be. In this case, I am going to leave myself on there. Going to say OK. You can type in your message. You can say OK. And sometimes it takes a minute or two, even though I said now. It showed up here. I can click close. Sometimes I might refresh on here, but it often does take a minute or two before a new notification like that shows up on your notifications tab. You also might note you might be working elsewhere in EHR, and certain notifications when they arrive will have a little pop-up down in the lower right-hand corner that a new notification is there. You can, in some instances, that's as designed because it wants you to know about something, that it feels is important. The lower priority notifications do not give the pop-up bubble. Like as you see, that notification just popped up. I did not get a bubble down in the right-hand corner here because it was a low priority notification. Again, if I had a high priority one, I'd get a little bubble down here. So even if had I been over on the medications tab or the notes tab or wherever, it would let me know about it. But again, it's just letting you know that, hey, you've got a new notification on your notifications tab you might want to go look at. You don't have to stop and address it right then. You can just ignore it or close out the little bubble and go about working. Well, I believe that covers our notifications basics. Remember, really try to address your notifications, try to stay on top of them, and it can be a good communication tool to help you learn how to work with your coding staff, particularly on things like missing purposes of visits. If you feel that you're getting a notification that you shouldn't be getting, talk with your clinical application coordinator. Maybe there's something else going on. Maybe you're on an additional list of teams within EHR that you shouldn't be on, and maybe that's why you're getting additional notifications, things like that. One other helpful hint is you saw when I right-clicked and I went to when I was showing you the schedule, that little hover help that I mentioned is actually called a hint in this, what EHR calls it. If I unclick that, then it doesn't do that. So notice I'm hovering my cursor over these and I'm not getting that little flash box. So if that box bothers you, by all means, you have control over that to either turn it on or turn it off. I believe that covers the basics of our notifications tab. Remember to try to stay on top of these notifications and address them as often as you can. Remember that you can sort them. Remember that you can process them in groups or individually as your time allows. Be sure to ask questions about notifications if you feel like you are getting some that you shouldn't be getting, or you feel like you're missing something that maybe you should get on a notification. Really communicate with your clinical application coordinator to make your notifications tab as meaningful and important to you as it can be and useful for you. Thank you for taking the time to learn about notifications today.